Hi, I'm Arglefump. I just realized I did not do a review for Nancy Drew Message in a Haunted Mansion, the Game Boy Advance version. And people are probably expecting me to hate this game and say it's terrible. I think it's okay. I just played Curse of Blackmore Manor, the DVD version. And I think that one's worse. I did not like that. So, in comparison, Message in a Haunted Mansion for the Game Boy Advance is okay. It's fine. It runs a lot faster. It doesn't have loading screens everywhere. I can hear music throughout the entire game. And the chapter system works a little better. Not that much better. Like, chapter number 4 is leaving the secret passageway and opening Lewis's briefcase. And that's it. That's the entire chapter. It's like you're not even leaving the library in that chapter. They also cut out, I think they cut out the section where you explore Abby's room, because I was not able to do that. The game has limitations, so I feel like the problems with the game are just tied with the limitations, because the Game Boy Advance is not too super powerful, so it doesn't have the graphics capability to have a bunch of animations and stuff. And that's sad, because the original game does have cool stuff. Like, a door slams, or you hear a whispering voice, or you see shadows. And that's really cool and atmospheric, and you don't get that in this version, because it really can't do animations. It does one animation of, the ghost going by, and it's really just picture number 1, picture number 2, picture number 3. It's not really animation, it's just 3 pictures. There was a unique picture during the seance. It shows Abby, Rose, and Nancy all holding hands from above. I wonder where that picture came from. Other than that, it looks like somebody just took all the pictures in the game and then they just shrunk them down. So here's a Nintendo DS. So this is a Nintendo DS. The Game Boy Advance has a screen smaller than this one. I think it's about that size, actually. So I really don't blame the game for looking like it's got a bunch of pixels everywhere, because you have to shrink it to fit this screen. So I actually did check. The screen's like 1/3 the size as tall, and then 3/8 the size as wide as the normal resolution of Message in a Haunted Mansion, which is 640 by 480. So, yeah, everything had to be shrunk down by 1/3. No wonder it looks all blocky and pixelated. I do think that somebody took care and effort into shrinking down the things. They didn't just run a program which cuts out like an inch from all sides. It's like, no. They it looks like they zoomed in certain areas. Sort of like when you're choosing a profile pic. You get to zoom in, you can move the crop left or right. So I did like that. The zoom in areas looked pretty good. And then the rest of the areas looked pretty much normal like they do in the game. They did remove a lot of areas, I think. Maybe not a lot, but like Nancy's suitcase. You can't check Nancy's suitcase in this version of the game. And I don't think you can zoom in on that one part of the parlor where you have like the behind the couch area. And I think some of the books were removed. They did have to remove some of the puzzles, it looks like. I'm surprised how many puzzles were actually in this game. They did make an attempt to have like all the puzzles normally. And I loved the tile puzzle upgrade. Because if you've played the original game, it is impossible to do the tile puzzle. You have to get it pixel perfect. Whereas this game, if you're just close, it accepts it. Like you could be 20% off and the game will accept that as a correct solution. And that's a huge improvement. I love that. That's great. They changed the Zodiac puzzle. So maybe you are supposed to examine Abby's room to get the answer to the new Zodiac puzzle. And they kept the safe opening puzzle. They kept the puzzle of turning suns into moons, but not the slider puzzle. I don't think anybody's too sad about that. They got rid of the maze puzzle on Lewis's computer. So now you just select his computer, and that's it. They have where the text box is normally in the Nancy Drew games, it gives a name for every single screen, and then that's also where clues show up. Like, so if Nancy, like, clicks on the door and says, "It's locked," it will appear in that little box area. And that's fine, but they also have text appear in the big main screen as well. And I don't know what the reasoning was behind that, because Nancy's got like 2 different text boxes in this game. I thought that was odd. They got rid of the phone. The phone is replaced with a cell phone, and that works just fine. That's great. With conversations in this game, what you do is you select a person, and then you get a picture of the person talking, like that, and then we have the text. Nothing gets said out loud, except for the line, "I see you," and even that felt like it was strained, like it was really, really hard for the speakers to play, "I see you," even that like brief 2-second clip. The scary message in a haunted mansion, that particular image looked perfectly fine in this version, so that's good. But most of the screens where you have to read something, what happens is you select it, and then we get a box which gives all the text. Sort of like in Mystery of the Seven Keys and Midnight in Salem, where, you can press the R button, and it will just give you all the text in big blocky text, so it's easier to read. I noticed some of the text was changed, and I don't know the reasoning behind that. Like, sometimes it felt like, well, they cut out like half of the text because otherwise it'd take up the entire screen, which is fine, but then other times they'd make small changes, like Abby says something instead of someone, and that's not a big change, but it is a change. And I don't know, I wish they had added a lot more dialogue to this version, because I don't have to worry about programming the characters' movements or having them talk. So they could have talked like a lot more, like the conversations with Abby and Rose could have gone on for a lot longer, but they clearly just tried to imitate the conversations in the original game. So I can't really blame them for that. The inventory is not good. I wish there was like a button to change the inventory, like maybe the left or right buttons, or the select button. The select button does nothing, neither does the start button. But because the screen is so tiny, you can only have one inventory item on screen at a time. And so it's really hard to go through your inventory, because you have to go through every single item in the inventory. And I would definitely recommend it if they decided to remake this game. I definitely recommend getting rid of some inventory items. So like once you're done with the music, it's gone. You can't see that in your inventory anymore. Or once you use the lantern, it's gone. You can't see it anymore. That's what I would do, just to free up inventory space, because it was kind of annoying with the inventory. I think the only other thing I should mention is how it's split up into chapters. I think that's fine. It works. So we don't have a zoom in on Nancy's alarm clock. There's no like clock in this game. So what they do instead is they have chapters. So when it's the end of chapter 1, then it switches to a different time. And when it's the end of chapter 2, it switches to a different time. And that happens a couple of times in the game too. Like you have the seance, and then the clock changes to a different time. It switches to nighttime when Charlie's not there, so you can explore the basement. Or when there's a fire, it switches to the middle of the daytime when Lewis is there, I believe. So, that happens in the actual game. That happens here too, but we get this little chapter screen with a little password. And, that's perfectly fine. It'd probably be a pain if they had, like, Nancy's clock in the game to, like, manually change the clock. And it'd probably be, like, too intensive for the system to handle. Honestly, I think this was probably the best they could have done with the game based on the hardware limitations. I like, they couldn't add any animation or anything. They couldn't really do any audio. So it's like, I don't know how you could improve this game while sticking in with the limitations of this really tiny screen. Like, maybe adding a way to scroll through the inventory, or having the start button do something. Like, those would be like my 2 main suggestions. Also, adding like more text to some of the screens. Like the opening letter, it's got about half of the opening letter from the actual game. I would have split it up into two screens for that opening letter, rather than just cutting out half and same for like all the other places where something gets cut in half. Like the letter to Diego, which we find on the stairs. We only get the top half of that letter, and we don't get the second half of that letter. Similarly, I think Charlie's research paper is changed. I actually think that's better, because like half of Charlie's research paper is just kind of unimportant anyway. But then we got like Charlie's postcard, and that's preserved in full. And then I think maybe the book in the letter in Lewis's briefcase, that's preserved in full. And so I don't know what was the decision-making process between what text we keep in full and then what text we cut in half. Similarly, I don't know the process between what text gets saved word for word and then what gets just like changed around a little bit. So, those are my thoughts on the Message in a Haunted Mansion Game Boy Advance remake. It's not that good, but it's probably the best they could have done for a Game Boy Advance version of the game. And I did like it better than White Wolf of Icicle Creek Wii, because that has the slow loading box in between every single step. Curse of Blackmore Manor, you have the slow loading animation between every single step, whereas this one, I think there is loading in between every single step, but it's disguised as like zoom in. Like the new picture just shows up and gets bigger. So, I mean, you can see it here. So I think that works. It's not obvious it's loading, and it's going faster than the other games, the other Nancy Drew ports, which have much longer loading times. So, you know, in comparison to those others, it looks good. It looks better with the loading. So, I don't know, I'll give it like a 7 out of 10, because I do want to rate it higher than White Wolf of Icicle Creek Wii, just for, but the Wii version had the cool motion controls too, so I forget what I rated. I think I rated White Wolf 6 out of 10, so I'll rate this one a 7 out of 10, just like, okay, it's a step above the White Wolf of Icicle Creek thing. It's a bit more of a faithful adaptation, even if, you know, it looks terrible and pixelated and you can't hear anything, but I'm giving it a pass just because it's for the Game Boy Advance. Like, if this was a DS version, a DS remake of the game, and that would have been awesome if they had a DS remake of the game, like, I wish they had. Like, if I time traveled and could do that project, I totally would do that project. But if it was like a DS version of the game, like, I would be way harsher on it if it looked like that. Also, you know, if the game came out for phones, like, oh, I wish the Nancy Drew games came out on phones. Like, that would be a dream. That would be fantastic. Bye.